Welcome to the Historian's Eye podcast for Jackson Spielvogel's Western Civ textbook, 10th edition. Chapter 9. The Recovery and Growth of European Society in the High Middle Ages. The period from 1000 to 1300, known as the High Middle Ages, saw a doubling of the European population and the growth of cities and trade. The climate improved, contributed to increasing food production, and forests were cleared and lands reclaimed from swamps. Iron plowshares brought heavy soil under cultivation, and horses, with the invention of the horse collar, replaced the slower-moving oxen in the fields. Water mills and windmills came into wider use. A three-field system of crop rotation meant that one-third rather than one-half lay fallow each year, and the increased demand for agricultural products improved the lot of the peasants. While peasants labored, the aristocratic ideal was to wage war. Tournaments allowed knights to train for battle, but it also provided a social outlet, contributing to the ideals of chivalry. The Church, with mixed success, attempted to limit warfare by forbidding fighting on Sundays and feast days, and by redirecting the ardor for battle into crusades. Castles served as fortresses and homes for the ruling class. Aristocratic women married young and were to be subservient, but they often had financial responsibilities, and some had considerable influence. The revival of urban life occurred first in northern Italy and in Flanders, where the wool cloth trade developed. Regional fairs, such as the one at Champagne in northern France, facilitated trade. In the cities, the largest with a population of 100,000, artisans organized into monopolistic craft guilds, which played a major role. New laws and customs evolved, and many towns gained charters of liberty from local lords, which guaranteed certain freedoms. The urban inhabitants lived and worked in close proximity. Fire was a constant threat, and dirt, disease, and pollution were rampant. There was also an artistic and intellectual renaissance in the High Middle Ages. The earlier monastic and cathedral schools were dedicated to clerical rather than lay education. The first university was founded in Bologna, Italy, where the recently discovered body of civil law was the focus of study. Students, mostly laymen, obtained a charter as a student guild, or universitas, in 1158. Paris, Oxford, and Cambridge soon followed. Teaching was in Latin, and the curriculum featured the 7 liberal arts of grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. Books were rare, thus instructors read the text to the students, adding their own interpretations. Many graduates took positions in the royal and church bureaucracies. There was a renewed interest in classical writings, particularly those of Aristotle, which were translated into Latin in the 12th century. Knowledge of Greek had largely disappeared in the West, but Muslims had made translations into Arabic, which in turn were translated into Latin. Christian theology was the queen of the sciences, and scholars attempted to reconcile faith and reason, using logic to validate revelation into a system known as scholasticism. The most influential of the scholastics was Thomas Aquinas, who died in 1274, who used Aristotelian logic and the dialectical method of posing and answering questions in his Summa Theologica. In literature, Latin began to give way to the vernacular. Troubadour poetry was written in the vernacular, as were the heroic epics such as the Song of Roland. In architecture, Romanesque, with its barrel vaults and massive pillars and walls with little space for windows, gave way in the 12th century to the Gothic. Ribbed vaults and pointed arches allowed for higher cathedrals, and flying buttresses, by redistributing the weight, made for thin walls and stained glass windows, whose natural light symbolized God's divine light. Cathedral construction took decades. It was a community endeavor, functioning as the artistic, artisanal, and economic center of many cities, as well as the religious center. An act of faith in this world and in the next.